Well, it's good to be back live on a Thursday night. Yes, we are live and loud, not necessarily local because we are all over the world right here on YouTube. And tonight, I'm really excited about the guest we have. His name is Nicholas Hennink, and he has music that is courageous, it's bold, and yes, it's for heroes. Oh, okay. The guy to the left of me on the screen here, or you're right, this little bird Poe, it's not Euros, it's heroes. So we'll be right back in just a moment after I get this bird straightened out. It's probably going to get me in trouble tonight anyway. So we'll be right back with Nicholas Hennink. And there he is, Nick. Welcome to Ravensheart, brother.
Hey, Glenn, brother. How you doing?
Doing good. You are all the way up north in that other country, Canada.
Canada. And today is pretty cold. I'm up in Alberta, around the Calgary area. So it's cold.
It's cold and it's warm here in Columbia, South Carolina. Well, let's cut the weather and let's get to the meat of what we're going to talk about tonight. Yeah. Let's do it. I just came across your music just several days ago, reached out to you. I was like, this is a man I have to talk to. And really what captured me is just the spirit that you have, the boldness, the attitude, and the courage in your music. Why have you chosen to be so bold and courageous for Jesus? That's I really want to know.
Honestly, Glenn, I think it's because God called me to. And when he says walk, we need to walk. I went through a very dark period in my life with addiction, PTSD from my job as a paramedic for over 18 years. It was very tough. Like, honestly, life was hard. I didn't even want to be on this earth anymore, but God had different plans. And there was a certain day that I remember so clearly that I felt God talking to me and said, "Hey, Nick, like, this is the direction I want you to go." I didn't know how it was going to happen. I didn't understand when, who's going to be involved. But since that day, he's opened up these amazing doors. And all I had to do was just walk through. So this is all to his glory.
Wow. I really definitely want to talk about some of that a little bit more. But how was it that you found God? How did you hear his voice? When did it happen? How did it happen?
So I was actually doing music on a secular level, not really going anywhere. Like, I made a few songs. One song was called Warriors that the US Army picked up, which I was so proud that they recognized me for the kind of music that I was putting out there. But it truly was, I grew up in a Christian home, but I went my own direction. I really thought that I knew better than God, believe that or not, right? We do all the time.
Go figure.
That's the life that I was living. And it just turned into a spiral and a disaster. And when PTSD hit, I didn't know how to cope. And there was a point in my life with my wife, and we were going through such a difficult time with finances, with work, with my mental health. And Glenn, it was one of those days, and I'm very honest about it. I was driving in my car and I was yelling at God. And I was like, you did this, like, everything's because of you. Like, where are you? Don't you love me? Don't I have a purpose? And I just wanted to give everything up. I just, I didn't want to deal with this pain anymore. And it was in that moment, God said, I will put the right people in place. And I broke down in tears and I surrendered my life to Christ at that moment. Fully surrendered. I knew who he was, but I really wasn't his son. And when I surrendered, and my wife had the same experience at the exact same time, believe it or not, that's a whole different story. We gave up our lives to Christ, and amazing things have happened. It hasn't been easy, but it has been a joy, a blessing, and just walking beside my Heavenly Father. Man, it's so cool. It is so cool.
I love your excitement and exuberance and just the life that is coming out of you. It's just so encouraging to hear. And I'm not surprised about your wife at all because you're one flesh. I mean, that's very biblical. Very biblical.
She's the better flesh, as she'll tell you. But, we are one.
So at the time that you came to Jesus, life was kind of crazy. It was like you're at the end of your rope,
Yeah.
from what I'm hearing you say.
Yeah, honestly, it was really difficult. I went to rehab 3 times, trying to beat this alcohol addiction. And really, the alcohol addiction was more of a coping mechanism because I was dealing with the PTSD. As you know, a lot of our colleagues, our brothers deal with this
Yes.
kind of I did not want to deal with it. And it just got worse and worse. And to a point that my life was in shambles. Like there's nothing in my power that would have got me through that. Nothing. I wanted to give it all up. I didn't want to live anymore. And that's the honest truth. Like, and I'm okay with telling people that I didn't want to be here anymore, but God had different plans. And when he comes into your life and he speaks to you and he changes things and opens the door for you, all I got to say is, if there's anybody else struggling today, just go for it, because he's real, and the miracles and the blessings that can come into your life is beyond anything you could have imagined.
Wow. I have to ask this question before we get to your latest release.
Yes.
You were doing music at the same time you were were serving as a paramedic?
Yeah, I was writing songs.
How did you pull that off?
I was doing it on my spare time. You know, I really wanted to get back into music, and I joined a studio in a little town called Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan. And it was fun, and I was putting out songs. I was kind of a little release for me, but none of them were Christian songs at the time. But yet, if you listen to it, a lot of it has that Christian undertone. Like Lauren Daigle, I started playing her songs. So like God was working in me without me even realizing that he was working in me.
Oh, that is a wonderful testimony. And that's something that I've noticed a lot is I have a lot of secular artists that I've listened to. You can hear God working in them, and you can even a lot of times hear their struggles with God. Unfortunately, a lot of religious people say, "Oh, they're just being blasphemous." No, it's God wrestling with them, like the angel of the Lord wrestled with Jacob. They're trying to figure it all out. We can't figure it out. Well, let's talk about your latest release, When I Call Upon Your Name. What is the underlying message of this song?
So that song was written more so, like, I write a lot of my songs in my personal experiences, obviously. A lot of the songs in the future will come out once a month. We're releasing a song. But that song was more of that I can go through a struggle in life. I can deal with these things that I don't want to deal with. And I can call upon God. And he's already been, he is there. It's not like he's left my side. It's my perspective of it. So I might be in a situation where I'm struggling and I feel he's so distant that, you doubt his existence sometimes because we're human beings. But his presence has always been there. Yes. So I'm just telling people that, when you're struggling, call out to him, because he is there and he wants to help you in your struggle. So that's all that song is really about, is that he's already there when you call out to him. You don't have to fly to the end of the world just to go talk to God. That's not how that works. Like, he's right there right now when you need him, because he loves you.
Yeah. Yeah. And I apologize. The proper title of the song is As I Call Out Your Name. I just realized a few minutes ago, I'm not using any notes at all. Usually I have my notes right in front of me and I'm going down and I'm like, oh, wow, I'm kind of out just here without supports. But hey, it's live. That's why we do what we do. And I love live because you get what you get. It's just real. This is not polished. This is just Glenn and Nicholas and some pesky little bird that shows up every once in a while on the screen, and we're just sharing what our hearts. So I apologize for that. The title of the song is As I Call Out Your Name, and here is the video for it. Everybody, check this out. Buckle up. This is a good one.
Silence, I feel alone. In the darkness, my heart turns to stone. your name, you're already here. In the storm, in the flame, you calm all my fear. Though I run, though I hide, still your love remains. You're never far, you're always the same. As I call out your name. In the struggle, I feel the weight. Like a river, it pulls me away. But you're a constant through the chaos and the noise. I hear your mercy in the echo of your voice. When the shadow surrounds and I get my solid ground, I remember you are near. In the silence I'll hear. As I call out your name, you're already here. In the storm, in the flame, you calm all my fear. Though I run, though I hide, still your love remains. You're never far, you're always the same. As I call out your name. No matter how far I fall, you're there to catch me through it all. Your love is faithful, strong and true. All I have to do is call to you. As I call out your name, you're already here. In the storm, in the flame, you calm all my fear. Though I run, though I hide, still your love remains. You're never far, you're always the same. As I call out your name. You're never far, you're always the same. As I call out your name. As I call out your name. As I call out your name. As I call out your name.
I'm gonna say what I said the other night when I was talking to your wife as we were setting this all up. Ivan Moody, watch out.
That's one of the biggest compliments I have gotten. Thank you so much.
that was just the vibe that I got off of that. And here's the thing is that you are a real deal first responder. It's not just that you have this heart for first responders, it's that you are a first responder. You've been a advanced, I believe it's an advanced care paramedic.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Poe, our Raven, says that was a total banger, and he was wondering if there's a paramedic in the house.
Oh, that's so great.
That knocked him out. Where did you film that video? It's absolutely gorgeous.
That was at one of the what's that?
The Okotoks, Alberta, and the
Okotoks, Alberta.
Alberta?
So it was a cathedral, yeah. So we actually were looking for a location for about 2 weeks, and we got a lot of good responses. A lot of people said yes. Once again, those doors opened, but this one came, I think it was like a day or two just before we were about to shoot.
Oh wow, you must have been sweating it.
Oh man! And we're walking into the church, and we're like, "This is it."
And they've
Like-
never done that.
And they've never done that before. They've never allowed anything like that. So we had to present them with the song and talk about what it's about, the lyrics, things like that. And they were happy to do it. And I think that's amazing.
Wow, that is absolutely amazing. It's really hard to find a church that would be open to the type of music that you do and the type of music that we feature here on Raven's Heart. That is just God opening doors. And I was contemplating, I was meditating upon the song this morning, deep meditations with Glenn. And I wanted to go a little bit deeper into it. I was like, what am I listening? And that's what I do with music. What am I listening to? What's going on here? Because a lot of times we listen to music with filters and we don't quite get what's going on. And as I was, of course, the bold and the courageous, that is just so evident in your music. But what you're singing is very much like the Psalms, where the psalmist, whether it be David or one of the other psalmists, they're crying out to the Lord. And the Lord took me to Psalm 77 this morning. as I was preparing for this, verses 1-2, where David wrote, I cried unto God with my voice, even unto God with my voice. And he gave ear to me. He listened, he heard. And this whole thing of calling out to God, you're right. We don't need to go across the world to do it. We don't need to find like this special spot to do it. We can do it right here. And in Romans, it's so simple. And I love this. In Romans chapter 10, verses 13-14, Paul wrote, for whosoever, that's anybody that's watching can do this, no matter what. Whosoever shall call upon the name of the Lord shall be saved. How then shall they call upon him in who they have not believed? And this whole thing of calling upon the Lord that you're singing about in this song, it's an act of both humility, that I can't do this, God, I need your help, and it's an act of faith.
Yeah. It's removing that power that we think we have. I think that's a delusion that a lot of us walk around in today's world, thinking that we have this ability to do it alone. And that's not how God intended it to be. That's not how he wanted it to be. He wanted us to walk with him and call to him when we're struggling, because he wants to be there for us. It's funny that you mentioned David and Paul. Those are my two favorite. I know we're not supposed to say favorites, but David was a bad guy in a lot of ways, right? And so was Paul, murdered people. But these guys, even though with the struggles that they went through, God used them.
Yeah.
And it's one of the things I keep telling people that come to me and say they're struggling with PTSD or addiction or, just struggles in life in general, is that God uses the broken.
Yes.
But he uses them as warriors.
Yes.
That's the thing. He calls on the broken and then he puts them in a position of being a warrior. And I believe that's not trying to put pride into it, because that's not what that is. When God's saying, okay, Nick, I need you to go out there and I need you to use your music now for me. You did it for you. It didn't work out for you. Do it for me now, because I'm going to use that music for a purpose. I'm going to use that music to help somebody that might be in the same situation that you were in. And how much that sucked. Mm-hmm. So absolutely. If all I'm doing is writing lyrics of situations that I dealt with and that resonates with somebody else, man, I can't do that. Only God can.
Only he can. Yes.
Only he can. It's a blessing. That's all it is.
And the way that he knit you, Nick, is so unique. It's very much like David. And this is one of the things that made what David did so powerful, is he wasn't just a theological guy that studied the word and spent his time in church, if you will. I mean, in the tabernacle or during his time, he was out there doing stuff. And that's where he met God. And that's where he experienced God, was out there doing stuff. There's so many believers that are in this delusion, and I would even say church leaders that are in this delusion that, well, I need to separate myself from doing anything else in the world just to focus on the Lord. There's some God called to that, but really the ones that I see God use are the ones who've been out there in the muck and the mess and the mire. And what happens when you do that is you get leadership skills. When that happens, because you did what you did, you had to lead people, you had to help people. You were out there binding up the brokenhearted and the wounded in the physical. And that's how God's using you now with your music. So I would encourage anybody that kind of gets that schizophrenia that goes on. It's like, well, I've been really called to ministry, so I'm going to separate myself for the rest of my life and just kind of do nothing else. No, get out there and get dirty, get messy, roll your sleeves up, do stuff, because that's really where you meet God and where he can use you a lot of times.
I absolutely agree. We need to be out there with everybody else. We need to be out there with our friends, colleagues that aren't Christian, that don't believe in God. We need to be an example, a light, as it says in the Bible. And I think you're right. I honestly think you're Romans 8:28. We go through our struggles when we're in that muck, but it builds skills. It builds the ability to do the job that God wants us to do in the future, to be that warrior, if you may. We need to go through those struggles. Otherwise, you can't just walk into that warrior position, but don't know how to swing a sword.
Right.
It's
bingo.
You need to be in that. You need to understand what it feels like. I understand what addiction feels like. I understand what it feels like to lose family, friends, relationships. I understand what it feels like to see people die, suicides. I understand what you're going through. So when I'm singing those songs, I'm telling people I get it. And it's not a badge of pride. Don't
Right.
get me wrong. I wish that I didn't deal with that stuff. And I know I know you understand what I'm talking about
I
because
know
you deal
exactly
with
what you're
it on
talking
a
about.
daily basis. It's not something that I can go home and go, oh, I'm glad I experienced that. No, I'm not.
Yeah.
I got to see things that really messed me up, but God is using it for good. And that is exactly what Romans 8:28 means.
Yes. And it's like Jesus had to put on this body of flesh to come and dwell among us, to be acquainted, become acquainted. The Bible says it's to become acquainted with our sufferings, to feel our grief. And that's what makes him such a wonderful savior, is that he knows what it feels like to go through what we go through, because he rolled up his sleeves. He came down from heaven in the form in a human body and experienced all the stuff that we experienced, and then went through an absolutely horrifying death that most of us don't have to endure, so that he could be acquainted. He was acquainted. He took on our sicknesses. He experienced all of that while he was on the cross, and experienced life so that he could be. That's what makes him, according to the book of Hebrews, the great high priest for us.
Amen. And he didn't have to do that. That's the thing that people don't understand. He didn't have to do that. He created the universe.
Yes.
He could have stopped anything he wanted to stop, but he didn't. He loved us so much that he took on those struggles, that pain, and he died for it. A horrible, horrible death.
Yes.
And of course, resurrected. That's the reason why we're here today. And yeah, we owe everything to him. Like if I'm a father, and I would give anything to my child. Anything. So it just, and my love for my child, or my wife's love for our children, isn't even close to what God's love is for us. And if we can fathom that, life doesn't seem that bad, because he went through it way before we did, and he paved that way.
He did. He did. So tonight, if you're watching and listening, wherever you are, don't be afraid to go out and engage in life. Go outside and play. God may have called you to ministry, but there's maybe something that's not necessarily ministry that you would think was secular that you need to go do. And the area that you've worked in and the areas that I've worked in, it's not Christian friendly environments all the time.
No, it's not.
You all just can't go work for Chick-fil-A. It's not gonna, here in the United States. It's not going to happen. Go work at Burger King, where it's a little bit rougher. Maybe I don't know, but it's the Euros we were talking about at the beginning got me on the food.
I know. I saw that. I'm like, oh, I'm kind of hungry.
That Euro that he had did look pretty tasty there. Let's talk about the PTSD for a moment, because that's something that I've had to learn about. I thought I never knew that I had PTSD until I started to talk about it with some people, and actually until I sat down with one of my pastors, and we started going over things that I needed to be healed of and let go of, and to walk through and step through. And I was like, dude, I'm like more messed up than I thought I was. And I thought that's just the way life was. I didn't see it as PTSD. How did you come to realize that that's what you were struggling with? And did you go through a period of time in your life where you didn't even realize that's what you were having to face?
Oh yeah. I can resonate with that very well. There was probably 14 years of being in EMS that I didn't think I had a problem. I would just go on my daily, work schedule, and on my days off, I would find myself. I think it started mostly with the mood. So my moods weren't the same anymore, and I was like, okay, so what's going on with me? Why am I struggling with this? Commercials would make me cry, and that's not something that really affected me before. And then it really got to a point where I started having nightmares, and I started having night sweats, and I'd wake up in a panic. And a lot of it would come from guilt and shame. I would feel guilt with the situation that I was dealing with on ambulance. I'd feel guilt, and I'd feel like I could have done better. I could have changed the situation in a certain way. Maybe if I did it this way, it would have been better. And that's just our brain trying to make sense of what we're doing and what went on during that call. But it got really bad to a point that I couldn't sleep. I was really sleep deprived. And then I started drinking alcohol because it cuts off that REM cycle. That's really why a lot of us start with alcohol, is that we don't have those dreams anymore. So the dreams went away. So I was like, oh, this is working, until it doesn't work anymore. And then the alcohol becomes a problem. So it was this spiral that I had to go through until I had to admit to myself and other people around me that I had a problem, and that I was really struggling with PTSD. And I had to dig deep into the situations that were triggering me. And there were a lot of things I didn't even think of anymore. As you know, like there's things that happened in the beginning of my career that never thought bothered me. But talking about it with somebody else that is struggling, or talk about it with a psychologist, and allowing myself to feel it, I realized it did bug me, and it bugged me for a long time, and I just didn't want to admit it. So I think, not that I don't want to talk too much on it, but I think the one thing that we can realize is that this whole male toughness thing that we got going on in our society needs to end. A lot of us, when I got into EMS, and when you started too, it was very much, don't show your feelings about it. Don't talk about it. If you have a problem, then you shouldn't be doing in this industry. So I was taught that you cannot talk about this kind of stuff. You had to bury it. But there always comes a point where you cannot bury that anymore, and it becomes this toxic experience in your life. And that's kind of what happened with me. And until I had to realize that I had a problem, and after that, it didn't solve it. I had to actually deal with it, and that took years after that as well.
It builds up. It's
Yeah.
something. It's not something that, oh wow, all of a sudden I got all these PTSD symptoms. It's something that just builds. It's just exponentially builds up is probably the best way to describe it. I want to encourage wives and the husbands of those that are in military service or in EMS or law enforcement or fire or any type of first responder like that. A lot of times you may think that, oh, wow, my spouse is acting very strange. This is very unusual. Take a step back and ask God for discernment in what's going on and how to minister to them, because they've experienced things and they've been through things that you've not experienced or been through yourself. And there may be some post-traumatic stress disorder that's going on there. It doesn't mean, just because somebody has PTSD, it doesn't mean that they are a bad person at all.
No.
It just means our frame, our body, our mind, our souls, our spirits were not built originally to deal with the tragedies of this life. We were not originally built to deal with the trauma of this life. I just keep thinking tonight about how when Adam and Eve had sinned in the Garden of Eden, and God killed the lamb right in front of them to clothe them. To see that must have been absolutely traumatizing, because up until then, that was their pet Fluffy. And now Fluffy got slain so that they could have clothes because they had committed sin. That's traumatic.
I never thought of that before. That's a really cool interpretation. And you're right. It's not something that you can train. I mean, and the thing is, a lot of people say we desensitize because of movies and Hollywood and things like that. But it's not the same. The emotional component that you put into it is what hurts you.
Yes.
And like you said, it's not something that comes. You don't go to something and then sometimes it does. Don't get me wrong, but for most of us, it's cumulative. So it comes over the years of experiencing these things and not dealing with it. It could be the cry of a parent seeing their child die. It might not be the child. It might be the parent, because you can relate to that parent.
Yes.
And you see, maybe there was actually an incident of mine. Obviously can't give names and situations, but the child did die, but the child was the same age as my daughter at the time. Yeah. And I saw the parents break down, and that bugged me. And I thought I could just wash it off. and it did not go away, and it just festered, and and once it's festering, it just adds on, like this little gremlin, right? Just keeps adding onto it until eventually it takes over everything.
It does. It does. I'm going to keep this. Usually we cut off at about 30 minutes, but we've got comments rolling in. We got participation tonight, so we're gonna keep going. We got AVJR. Hey, welcome. He's going to watch the stream later. He's got some things to do tonight with the Lord. That's good. Thank you. And he's a regular viewer and participant.
Cool.
Yes. And then we got somebody here. Nick's Don't Warriors has helped so many people, and first responders are a special breed. Thank you. Yes.
Yeah.
And then we've got Greg Paste. Hi, Nick. And let's see.
Hey, Greg.
What else. Hey, and Greg says, I can't wait to see you this weekend. Do you have a show this weekend, or are you helping him cut down a tree in the backyard? What is it?
I don't know which Greg this is. I think this might be Greg, our drummer roadie.
Oh, okay.
He manages the drums. When we did the Petra tour, he was the guy that came with us and did all the drums. Just got the biggest heart. Such a nice guy. If I'm seeing him this weekend, that's awesome. I didn't know that.
There you go. Well, it's come up several times, and I would like to talk about it. And for those that are watching, do this after the live stream, please. There's a link below us in the description to Nick's song Warriors. And this was a song that was picked up by one of my favorite institutions in the United States, the United States Army.
There you go.
And it was performed by the United States Army Band. I'm talking like the Army Band, not the one that's out of like, Fort Poison Ivy. It's, it is the United States Army Band, the one out of Washington, D.C. Now, my first question for you is, here you are, a paramedic, and you're writing music and doing all this stuff. Poe, my Raven friend, has got an idea on how the Army found your song. He's got his tinfoil hat on, and he's got 3 letters there. I'm not going to mention it because I don't want to get kicked off of YouTube. So if I'm catching your attention, take a look down on the left of the screen. But how did the Army find your song, and how did this all come about, and what did they do with it?
So yeah, I made the song with a music video, and I did it as a tribute to first responders, and I really didn't think anything of it, to be honest with you. It was months went by and nothing happened, and then I got this strange email from the US Army, and first thing I thought was, Glenn, I was like, this is fake. I was like, I'm not responding to this, so I ignored it. and then it came again. It came, I think, like a week later. It came again from a higher up. It was like, okay, this is I can't even remember the title at this point. I should remember it because he was such a nice guy. But he was like, no, this is serious. Like, we really want to use your song. We're doing this tribute for 9/11, and we want to play the song that you have. And I was, and in the email it said, how much money do you want for this? Like, how much can we buy, like, the rights to play it? Thought it was fake. Ignored it again. And there was just something in me. The third time, I was like, okay, I'm going to look into this. Like, maybe this guy's legit. So I looked up the name, and yeah, lo and behold, it came up on the screen of this guy ran the U.S. Army Band, and does a lot of the organizing of their concerts and things like that. He's at one of the military bases. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to give him a call. So I called him, and very professional, very military. I'm like, okay, this is legit. This guy really wants to use my song. And he said to me, it's like, okay, well, how much money do you want for the song? And I said, nothing. I don't want anything. Like, if you know what a blessing it is just for the fact that you guys want to play my song, to thousands of American soldiers. The only thing I regret is that I wasn't able to go because I was working that day. And they offered to bring me to the show to watch the band play, and I didn't do that. And that's the one thing I regret. But yeah, what a blessing. I got 2 little medals out of it. So happy.
What a story. 3 emails. You thought it was a phishing scam.
Oh, I did. Yeah. Oh, wow. Yeah,
so the link for Warriors is down below. It's down in the description. Check it out. We have the U.S. Army version of it down there. I think we have the other version as well for everybody to see. So go ahead down in the description below and check that out. It's a phenomenal song, and God's just really been opening a lot of doors for you.
He has, and that's not the end of Warriors either, because Warriors came back around again, and John Schlitt from Petra and myself, we are redoing Warriors. We're going to Nashville. We're going to redo the song, and we're going to do it even bigger on a tribute, on a scale that we can just really bless our soldiers. And we're trying to think of a way to do that. And we're working on planning it right now, and you'll probably hear some cool things about it in the future.
Well, thank you for doing that. And how did that relationship with John, I mean, the legendary lead singer from the one and only Petra, how did that connection come about?
Well, I was in a band called Revival at the time, before I started really focusing on my ministry as Nicholas Hennink, by my name. And we got to play a couple of shows on the tour with Petra, and they really liked the music. John really liked my voice, so we got to know John a little bit, prayed with him. There was one point where I was driving John from 3 hours from one place to the next, just John and I in the car, just listening to music and getting to know each other. And he became more of this mentor and friend, because it's John Schlitt. If he tells me this is going to hurt you in the industry, I'm probably going to listen to him, because he knows. So that relationship really blossomed, and my wife honestly looks at John Schlitt as a father figure. Loves him to death, and he calls probably every day to every second day to see how we're doing, and that relationship has really blossomed. And we love going to him and Dorla, his wife, in Nashville, just to say hi. So I'm very happy. When God opens those doors, he opens it in big ways.
He does. He does. And you've helped open a door, and I will make the announcement now. John will be joining us live on this live stream on the 27th. So yes, on the 27th of March, that is. So right at the end of the month. Our last show for the month is going to be the legendary lead singer from Petra, John Schlitt. So please join us live, because if you have questions, we're going to be taking the questions. Now, we do moderate the questions that come through. We do get some weird ones every once in a while, but we do take a look at those before we post those, and we're really excited. And thank you for helping open that door with John. And I understand that there's some rumblings of a tour with you and John coming up in the very near future in 2025. Can you tell us a little bit about that before we close out?
I can't tell you a lot.
Okay.
Most of it in the planning session, but yes, John and I are doing a joint tour together, and we are just so excited to be raising our hands to Jesus, man. We really are. And we want to bring it to the troops. That's all I'm saying. But we are going to be doing something in the future in the United States, and hopefully a little bit in Canada. And we want to dedicate our time to the troops and really talk about the life-saving Jesus Christ, right? Like, yes, we have to. And I'm excited about that.
Yes. And I can tell you this much right now. We will help you promote that on Raven's Heart and get the word out about this tour. So I believe in what you're doing, because we're cut from the same cloth as first responders. And that's as far as I'll go on my end with that. But I do have a military background, as well as many people do know. And I really appreciate what you're doing for them. It just really, this is real to me, because I'll never forget in the mid 2000s when I went to my first Five Finger Death Punch concert, and they came out and they had the army camos on.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, where's this going? I'm not too hep on them wearing the uniform that I wear. And what are they going to do? And then what they did with it was just, I was like, okay, I'm down with Five Finger Death Punch, and Bad Company was my song for like 2 years.
I'm a big fan, by the way. I don't get me wrong, I'm on the Christian route, but Five Finger Death Punch, that Moody's voice.
Oh, it's amazing.
It's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. His range, his vocal range. And then that show, Drowning Pool, was also there at that time. And after we heard Let the Bodies Hit the Floor, another great hit. if you're military background. They did their song Soldiers, and I'll never forget what happened in the venue. My hair was a lot shorter at that time. I was a lot younger at that time, and people looked around at me, and I actually had my operations sergeant from my unit with me. We went to the show together in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina.
That's awesome.
Everybody turned around and looked at us like, you guys were like, oh yeah. So we kind of became the unofficial stars of the show in the back of the room. So that was awesome. But to see this come from somebody who's truly been there, who's truly rolled their sleeves up as an advanced care paramedic, and that is not an easy job. You're dealing with mess all day long. It's stressful. You're going from call to call. There really is no break. It just continues to grind. It's not like you wake up in the morning and roll into the office and it's just the same old routine. No, it's stressful situation after stressful situation. And because you've done that, what you're doing is genuine. And it's really, I think you're really going to, I believe, I'm not going to say think, I believe that you're really going to reach into the first responder and military community through what you're doing with the gospel message of Jesus.
Thank you. It means a lot. It really does. They're family to me. You know, I've been in that line of work for so long. And yes, it was my identity for the longest time. Now my identity comes from Christ. But I still love them, and I love what we're doing, and I don't want to see people struggle. I've lost friends to suicide. It's a problem. It really is a problem, and we need to stand up for them.
Yeah, we do. We do. It's a misunderstood community in a lot of ways. A lot of times it's completely underappreciated as well. A lot of people, they just don't understand that community. Before we close out tonight, is there anything else you'd like to share with us?
No, all I can say is just make sure you check out my new song, He Paid the Price, with John Schlitt on the 28th of March coming out. You'll see a music video with John in it.
Nice. So a new single coming out the 28th of March. He Paid the Price is coming out. Thank you, Nick. Thank you so much for joining us. It's been a pleasure to have you on. Hold on the line with me. And next week we have our good friends from North Carolina, Progressive Christian Rock. These guys are just as good as Yes, just as good as Asia. I'm not kidding. They are Audible Terrain. The week following, we have the legendary John Schlitt from Petra. And then the first week of April, we have Miss Rachel DeLong with us. And if you like Paramore, this is somebody you're really going to enjoy. So until next